Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. On a chilly Friday evening in late October, the quiet town of Maplewood lay cloaked in mist as the clock in the town square struck 7. The streets, usually bustling with the laughter of children and the warm greetings of neighbors, were eerily still. A sense of anticipation tinged the air, as if the town itself was holding its breath. Nestled between tall, aging trees was the old Miller house, a Victorian relic that had seen better days. Its paint was peeling, and the once vibrant gardens had succumbed to a wild undergrowth. Tonight, however, the house was alive, its windows glowing with the soft flicker of candlelight as families gathered for the annual Halloween block party. Zoe Anderson, a 28-year-old school teacher, known for her infectious smile and unwavering support for her students, had decided to forgo the festivities. A sudden chill of anxiety had gripped her as she found a letter slipped beneath her front door, its parchment yellowed with age. The scrawling handwriting sent a shiver down her spine. "It's time you remember," it read, inked in an unsettling flourish. Haunted by the specter of her past, Zoe couldn't shake the urgency of the note. Buried deep within her memories lay secrets intertwined with betrayal, and she had fought tooth and nail to keep them dormant. But as she paced the small confines of her living room, the flickering candles barely illuminating her troubled thoughts, she knew this would not be a night of idle distraction. The past was demanding recognition, and she found herself reluctantly listening. The victim. As the clock's hands inched closer to 8, a gust of wind rattled the old window panes of the Miller house. Zoe sank onto the worn fabric of her living room chair, the letter clenched tightly in her fingers. The words on the page echoed through her mind, dragging her back to a time when innocence coexisted with dark shadows. She forced herself to remember Sarah Collinsthurl, whose laughter had once brightened every corner of Maplewood High School, and whose absence loomed larger than life. Sarah was the embodiment of joy, with her radiant smile and boundless energy. The two girls had shared everything from school assignments to secret crushes. They had been inseparable, standing side by side through the trials of adolescence. But that bond crumbled abruptly one fateful night during their senior year, a night that would forever alter the course of their lives, especially for Sarah. It had started off like any other night. The autumn air was ripe with the scent of bonfires and fallen leaves, and the teenagers of Maplewood had gathered at the annual Halloween dance, a night of laughter, costumes, and innocent recklessness. But as the moon climbed high and the music blared, whispers circulated that someone had confronted Sarah about her family's troubled past, a pieced-together tale of chaos and despair that would later entangle them all. Zoe's memory drifted into a haze of regret and confusion. In the frenzy of that night, Sarah had vanished, leaving nothing but heartache in her wake. When her body was discovered weeks later in a nearby forest, the spark of light that had once been vibrant in the town dimmed, replaced by lingering questions and a palpable sense of loss. Even now, echoes of that tragedy resonated through Maplewood, haunting Zoe as much as the unsolved mysteries of the past. She glanced back at the letter, the flicker of the candle illuminating her resolute expression. For so long, she had carried the weight of despair woven into her relationships and her memories. But now, as shadows lengthened outside, she understood she could no longer live in denial. Sarah deserved to be remembered, and Zoe was about to uncover the truth. The crime scene. An unforgiving chill settled over Maplewood the following morning. A stark contrast to the fragile warmth of hope or closure that Zoe had clung to the night before. Determined to confront her past, she slipped into a faded jacket, laced her boots, and steered her car down familiar streets that felt heavier with each turn. She headed toward the forgotten edge of the forest, where Sarah's life had ultimately unraveled in an area shrouded in whispers of sorrow and remorse. As she parked and stepped into the underbrush, the air thickened with secrets long buried. The trees loomed overhead, their branches reaching like skeletal fingers. Yet, it was the crunch of leaves beneath her boots that brought distant memories rushing back. Memories attached to laughter, shared dreams, and Zoe moved through the tangled path, navigating through a landscape she once knew like the back of her hand. The clearing came into view, the site where Sarah was discovered. The abandoned spot held an unsettling stillness, encased in an embrace of silence that felt oppressive. Just beyond the threshold of trees, a crude, weathered wooden cross stood, a solemn tribute marking the last place where life had flickered from her friend. Kneeling in the damp earth, Zoe traced the letters, etched into the weather-worn wood. With trembling fingers, the scrawled name, now a haunting echo of a life cut tragically short. She lowered her head, her heart pounding in her chest as she peered into the dense brush surrounding the clearing. Memories of the investigation flooded back, the frantic search parties, news cameras flashing, and muffled sobs of despair that had filled the air just weeks after Sarah disappeared. In the swift movement of passing clouds overhead, Zoe spotted something shimmering, half buried in the leaves. She hesitated, the shadows whispering a warning. But her curiosity triumphed. Unearthing the object, she revealed a tarnished locket, its intricate design untouched by time. As she cradled it in her palm, she remembered Sarah often wore a locket, a gift from her mother. The sensation of dread. Moments later, darkness enveloped her like a shroud, tightening its grip. As the locket lay heavy in her hand, she wondered, had this been forgotten? Or was it deliberately concealed? The air thickened with tension, and in that instant, Zoe knew she had unknowingly crossed the invisible line between the past and the present. The search for answers was only just beginning. The early investigation. The autumn sunlight cast long shadows as Zoe lingered in the clearing, grappling with the weight of the locket in her hand. It felt more than just a relic. It was a fragment of Sarah's existence, beckoning her to dive deeper into the circumstances that had spiraled out of control that fateful night. As she slipped the locket into her pocket, an urgency coursed through her veins. She could no longer remain a passive observer in a story that had haunted her for far too long. Returning to her car, Zoe rifled through her belongings, searching for a notebook she often used for jotting down thoughts and lesson plans. Productive conversations about Sarah seemed distant, memories dulled by time. She felt the need to piece together the fragmented pieces of the past before they slipped entirely from her grasp. With a deep breath, she began questioning the bits of information she had been dreading to revisit. That night was blurred in Zoe's mind, but ingrained in the collective memory of the community. The police had quickly launched an investigation, interrogating students and acquaintances, searching for a trace that would pierce the shroud of uncertainty. Local teens had been called in for questioning friends, acquaintances, and possible adversaries of Sarah. Each had provided alibis, tugged between innocence and the fear instilled by a community shaken to its core. The autumn leaves crunched beneath her boots as she made her way toward the local police station. As she crossed the threshold, the familiar smell of stale coffee and printer ink washed over her, conjuring bittersweet memories of days spent learning about justice and responsibility. Here in the heart of Maplewood's infrastructure were files sealed with the weight of unanswered questions, each folder containing hopes, fears, and mysteries left hanging in the early, desperate days after Sarah's disappearance. Zoe approached the front desk, where Officer Ramirez, a familiar face from the days of high school resource officers, sat sorting through stacks of paperwork. His expression turned to one of surprise as he recognized her. "Zoe, I didn't expect to see you here after all this time. I need to ask about Sarah," she said, her voice steady yet laced with emotion. "I found something." As he raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. Zoe felt the gravity of what lay ahead. The quest for the truth about Sarah Collins was not simply about bringing closure. It had become a part of her own narrativian intertwining of guilt, friendship, and the relentless pursuit of whether the past could ever truly be laid to rest. Dead ends. With Officer Ramirez's surprise turning into a cautious curiosity, Zoe spent the next hour in his cramped office, poring over the case files that had occupied the small-town police department for nearly a decade. The surrounding walls held faded photographs of local events and community milestones, now serving as a stark contrast to the weighty memories embedded in the documentation at hand. The case notes lay scattered, highlighting interviews with classmates and townsfolk. Zoe's heart sank as she flipped through pages brimming with redacted names and incomplete statements. Each account was a thread in an intricate tapestry woven with tension, suspicion, and the same fear that had bound the town in silence. Most of the witnesses provided solid alibis, Officer Ramirez explained, pushing a hastily filled-out page toward her. Still, there were a few names. He hesitated, as if aware of the heaviness of the names lingering in the air. Zoe scanned the entries, noting the familiar faces, friends now absent from her life. The paranoia that blanketed those days felt tangible. Hidden motives and buried resentments twisted in the shadows. As she read further, Zoe noticed the mention of a boy named Derek, a former classmate who had had a brief but heated argument with Sarah during a party just days before she disappeared. It was a detail passed over during the initial investigation. Something seemingly insignificant at the time. But now it loomed large. Derek was a troubled kid, Ramirez continued, flipping through the notes. Had a history of getting into fights. After Sarah vanished, the whole thing just fizzled. No leads, no signs of foul play. The conversation felt like a door closing. Zoe had hoped for answers, but every turn seemed to lead her deeper into shadows, where light once illuminated the truth. "So what happened to Derek?" She pressed, her voice urgent. "Moved away, I think. Got caught up in some trouble into his late teens. It's possible he could have left town, but finding him now, he trailed off, an implication hanging in the air, thick with disappointment." Frustration bubbled within Zoe as she shifted the pages before her. If Derek was gone, who else had been left behind? This case felt like a labyrinth of dead ends, leading her back to the same question. Why had Sarah's life been cut short? The faces of those who had promised to protect her swirled in and out of focus, leaving behind only the sense of unfulfilled obligations. With a resolve that felt both daunting and empowering, Zoe gathered her belongings. "I can't just stop looking," she told Officer Ramirez as she stood to leave. "There has to be more out there. Someone has to remember something." As she stepped back out into the crisp air, the shadows of Maplewood started to stretch once more, the weight of the past pressing down. But Zoe found herself willing to confront whatever feelings lay tangled within those shadows, reclaiming her voice in a story that had never truly ended. A break in the case. The days melded into one another, a blur of sleepless nights and relentless digging into the past. Zoe found herself retreating to the local library, gingerly combing through newspaper archives, yearbook entries, and anything else that could dredge up fragments of Sarah's life. But progress felt dishearteningly slow, and the weight of exhaustion began to settle within her bones. Yet on a Monday morning, the sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the dusty library windows. Zoe sat hunched over a stack of yellowed pages when a familiar face caught her eye: an old photograph of Sarah during the summer camp. A vibrant smile plastered across her face, surrounded by friends. Laughter frozen in time. But it was the other side of the page that drew Zoe in the names scrawled beneath, including Derek's, but also a name she hadn't fully considered: Emily Green. Emily had been Sarah's friend since childhood, believed to be close to her during their high school years. Yet, as Zoe recalled, Emily had seemed to pull away from the group by the time of Sarah's disappearance. Anxiety surged through her. Had Emily observed something no one else had? With a sense of urgency, Zoe tracked down Emily's last known address, which led her to a small apartment on the outskirts of town. After a quick glance at her reflection, she took a deep breath, trying to quell the flutter of nerves. This could be the breakthrough she had been longing for. It could be another dead end. As she knocked hesitantly on the door, the sounds of muted footsteps reached her ears. A moment later, the door creaked open to reveal a tired-looking Emily, her face drawn and wary. Zoe, her eyes widened in recognition, a flicker of something fear or recognition crossing her features. "Emily, I need to talk to you about Sarah," Zoe blurted out, her heart racing. "Please. It's important." She stepped aside, her posture tense. "Come in," she said quietly, leading Zoe into a dimly lit living room crowded with boxes and old furniture. Once inside, Zoe wasted no time. "I found some information, and I think you might have some insights," she started. "Do you remember the night of the Halloween dance?" "Exactly what happened." Zoe's heart raced, but with confidence she locked eyes with her former friend. "We owe it to Sarah to uncover the truth. If you know anything at all, please share it with me." The air thickened with tension as Emily stared at her, the weight of unexamined memories hanging between them. In that charged moment, Zoe sensed a shift. Emily was teetering on the brink of a revelation that could unravel the threads of the past, a chance at the truth they had both long sought, but never truly dared to confront. The suspect. Emily's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she settled onto the worn couch, the remnants of their shared childhood strewn around them, but now seemingly distant. Zoe perched on the edge of her seat, heart pounding as she braced for the words that might follow. "I was there that night. Emily began, her voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't supposed to go. Me parents didn't want me out late, but I snuck out. Sarah was excited, and I just couldn't let her down. Zoe felt her chest tighten as she listened. She had long ago filled the gaps surrounding Sarah's disappearance with tight-lipped closure. The truth had never felt so close, yet so maddeningly out of reach. What happened? I remember talking to her after the dance. Emily continued, her eyes unfocused as if retracing steps through a labyrinth of memories. Then some boys were talking about old rumors regarding Sarah's family. Derek was there. He was so angry. He was yelling. She paused, biting her lip as a tremor ran through her. I tried to pull Sarah away, but she didn't want to leave. She was upset about something else. I didn't understand then. As Zoe watched the storm brewing in Emily's eyes, realization dawned. Derek, she murmured. Did he hurt her? I don't know, Emily whispered, shaking her head. But after that night, he was acting differently. He seemed fixated on her. And I overheard him talking to some friends, saying things that made me feel uneasy. Zoe's mind raced. Derek, once distant but now looming larger in the narrative. What things? She pressed, needing clarity. Something about being sick of living in her shadow. Emily's voice cracked. And then there was a rumor that he was going to play a prank on her. I told Sarah, but she just laughed it off. Did you tell anyone? Emily snapped, her face scarlet with regret. I thought it was nothing, just teenage bravado, but when she went missing, I didn't know whether to tell the police about the fight. And now I can't stop thinking that I could have done something. Zoe felt her stomach knot. The pieces began to fit together. Emily, she said slowly, do you think Derek had anything to do with it? Do you think he could have hurt her? I don't know, Zoe. Emily explained everything: anger, the fight, and even after the police didn't find anything, he left town shortly afterward. Disappeared into thin air like Sarah. Zoe remained silent as a chill gripped her spine. This was the lead she had long sought, yet it came wrapped in darkness and regret. The haunting presence of Derek, a boy turned man steeped in unresolved anger, now loomed larger in her thoughts. Determined to act, Zoe steeled her nerves. I have to find Derek. If he had anything to do with Sarah's disappearance, no. Emily interrupted sharply, panic flashing across her features. You can't confront someone like that, Zoe. It's dangerous. You don't know what he's become. But determination coursed through Zoe's veins as she weighed Emily's warning. One thing remained clear. The search for answers had transformed into a hunt for a ghost from the past. Derek was no longer just a name. He was now a suspect in unraveling the mystery that had haunted Maplewood for far too long. The trial. The courtroom stood like a statuesque figure beneath the heavy gray sky, its facade seemingly unyielding through the months that had passed since Zoe uncovered crucial information about Derek. The clouds mirrored the collective apprehension that hung over Maplewood, an undercurrent of anxiety woven through the community's fabric as the day of the trial arrived. Zoe walked into the courthouse, a mix of determination and fear surging in her chest. She had spent the last weeks piecing together everything she had learned about Derek, fueled by revelations from Emily and her own memories. Zoe had finally reached out to law enforcement, leading to Derek's unexpected return to Maplewood. The arrest had sent shockwaves through the town, rekindling old suspicions as the trial approached. As she took a seat within the gallery, Zoe scanned the room, tension thick, punctuated only by hushed conversations and the rustling of papers. The place buzzed with colors, familiar yet foreign, while the faded blue walls seemed to cradle the omnipresent echoes of past trials and tribulation. Derek sat at the defendant's table, a mere shadow of the boy she once knew. His once boisterous demeanor had been reduced to a hardened, guarded presence. He stared blankly at the floor, avoiding the burden of returned gaze. As the judge entered, the room fell into silence, breath held in anticipation. The prosecution began, outlining the evidence that had spiraled out of the wreckage of Sarah's life. Emily's testimony about Derek's anger, the locket found at the scene, and circumstantial ties that connected him to the missing girl's last moment. Zoe listened intently, her heart racing as she strived to parse the facts from the emotional weight they carried. Derek's defense attorney countered quickly, attempting to dismantle the accusations with claims of lack of hard evidence and insistence on Derek's rights. Circumstantial evidence does not equate guilt, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he argued. Tone smooth yet calculating. Burdened by the shadows of doubt, parts of Zoe's resolve began to waver. She had come for closure, but was left grappling with uncertainty, the line between justice and revenge painfully thin. As witnesses took the stand, Zoe's heart twisted with each recollection of that fateful night. Doris, the head of the PTA, recalled hearing disputes leading to the dance, while others spoke of Derek's reckless behavior and simmering hostility. Each testimony pierced the veil of the past, but as moments passed, Zoe felt the court's atmosphere shift. Was Derek's perceived guilt slipping through like grains of sand? Then came the moment. The prosecution called Emily. Taking a deep breath, she walked to the witness stand. Zoe held her wrenched by the fragility of her former friend. Emily Green, can you recount the events of the Halloween dance? The prosecutor asked, his voice firm. I was there, Emily began, her voice trembling slightly, but resolutely. Sarah and I were together. Derek confronted her. He was angry, really angry, and I remember feeling scared for her. Though filled with honesty, Emily's testimony felt like a double-edged sword, vindicating yet haunting. It swayed the jury, gentle nods indicating the shift in their perception of Derek's role. As the trial moved toward its peak, Zoe felt the weight of predestined endings enveloping the room. Memories dredged to the surface, identities reshaped by the choices made in the courtroom. Every testimony danced around blame, closure, and the question of who would pay for the sins of the past. The gavel pounded and the atmosphere shifted, solidifying the fear that had intertwined with hope for so long. The deliberation started, and the tension simmered. A reminder that the fragile balance between justice and despair rested in the hands of those uncertain of any truth. Zoe's heart was heavy. This was only the beginning of bridging the gap between her memories and the harsh reality she faced. No matter the outcome, Sarah, who had vanished into the night, had not yet found peace. The aftermath. The verdict echoed across the courtroom like a bell tolling the end of an era. As the jury read its decision, Zoe felt the world shift beneath her feet. Not guilty. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, causing her breath to catch in her throat. The courtroom erupted in a mixture of gasps, sobs, and murmurs, a storm of disbelief sweeping through the gathered crowd. Derek remained impassive, a stony face masked beyond the years that now separated him from the charges against him. While Zoe stared at the innocent verdict, clarity seeped into her realization. Justice was not always served, nor did it guarantee closure. In that moment, she understood that the quest for truth was an unending journey. As she stepped out of the courthouse, the cool autumn air nipped sharply at her skin, but Zoe barely felt it. The town of Maplewood loomed around her, its familiar streets now suffused with a palpable weight of unanswered questions and lingering sorrow. Memories flickered like ghosts at the edges of her Minda silence, now louder than the triumphant laughter of the Halloween party that had become a catalyst for tragedy. Emily walked beside her, eyes downcast, guilt swirling in the depths of her expression. I thought we could finally get some answers," she murmured, her voice hollow. "I know," Zoe replied, fighting against the sharp sting in her throat. "But this isn't over. We can't let it be over." As they navigated through the throng of people emerging from the courthouse, Zoe's determination simmered beneath the surface. She couldn't change the past, but she could reshape her understanding of it. Each face on the street held a narrative, and she would seek them out if it meant shining a light on the darkness cast by that October night. Days morphed into weeks, darker than she had anticipated. Maplewood felt like a tight-knit tapestry unraveling slowly at the seams. Whispers circulated, shadows expanded, and undercurrents of mistrust infiltrated their once peaceful community. People began to retreat into their homes, eyes clouded with suspicion. Zoe sought solace in the little things intimate conversations with students, community gatherings that borrowed threads of normalcy. Yet in the quiet moments at night, her thoughts returned unbidden to Sarah. What had been pursued in the courtroom was merely a reflection of a larger narrative that needed a much broader audience. Committing to unravel the truth within Sarah's story, Zoe reached out to locals who had known her friend's teachers, even acquaintances who had otherwise remained in the shadows. With every conversation, she gathered insights, pieces that filled the vast emptiness left since the trial. Determined, she decided to host a gathering at the local community center, inviting anyone with memories or stories to share. An open heart and brave soul could ignite a ripple of change. "We can honor Sarah," she told herself, believing that in sharing her light, they might illuminate the darkness that still lingered. On the evening of the gathering, Zoe stood before the modest crowd, their faces a mix of curiosity and solidarity. Lanterns cast a soft glow around her, as whispers of memories began to thread through the room. And so, under the flickering lights, and amidst surrounding shadows, an unforeseen power began to rise within the hearts of those who remember. The past would fight to remain buried, but together they could weave a tapestry full of truth, empathy, and healing story of Sarah Collins, not ending at the courtroom doors, but blossoming anew. In this act of defiance against silence, Zoe understood. Even darkness could yield light, and amidst sorrow, hope lingered. Reflection. As the evening drew to a close, Zoe stood at the center of the community center, the air thick with emotion. The stories shared flowed like a healing balm, lifting the collective burden from their heart. Laughter intertwined with tears as memories of Sarah came alive, her infectious joy, her dreams, and the bond that once unified them as friends. Through shared remembrance, Zoe realized that while the trial had closed one chapter, it had opened another, illuminating the darkness with flickers of hope. Faces in the crowd had softened, eyes glazed with understanding, reminding her that every soul bore its scars. As she watched older generations connect with the younger ones, weaving tales of resilience, Zoe felt a shift within herself. The quest for closure was transforming into one of understanding, a reminder that healing comes in collective journeys. She found strength in the camaraderie, recognizing that Sarah had not truly vanished. Her legacy now existed within those who remembered her and spoke her name out loud. Maplewood was beginning to rise, reclaiming its voice in harmony. In the following weeks, Zoe felt change ripple through the town. A foundation emerged, one dedicated to supporting families of the missing, ensuring that here, the stories would be shared, that silence would not be allowed to fester in the dark. Her heart swelled with purpose as she took active steps in seeking out Sarah's truth, knowing that change often begins quietly, nudged by compassion and driven by love. As she gazed out across Maplewood from her porch, the sunset spilling soft hues over the horizon, Zoe understood that the past would never fully dissolve, but it could be honored, transformed, and even celebrated. The journey of loss had morphed into one of resurgence, and every voice mattered in crafting a narrative that could pave the way toward understanding and healing. Sometimes, the darkness only amplifies the light that emerges after storms. And in that realization, Zoe found peace. The story of Sarah Collins served as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a reminder that every life touched leaves an indelible mark worth fighting for, remembering, and cherishing.